Album ritratti, Lura Fiz-Zmien,
Lura Fiz-Zmien,
pajjiż motiħor, millina fien, titħabbek miegħu bla ma trid u kemm nixtieq impara l-ftit li jerġa' dak iż-żmien mill-ġdid. Li jerġa' dak iż-żmien mill-ġdid.
Lura Fiz-Zmien, wasanna għattilet u l-axħar parti, imma tfadal ftit affarijiet sbieħ x'naraw f'din il-parti. Warajja fuq l-iskrin jidher il-mikbi u maħbub Gerry Anderson. Il-bniedem illi tant ħadem, il-bniedem illi ta' l-inna l-tfal instiga fina biex nitħajru nibnu l-modelli. Il-mod kif nilabu, l-introduzzjoni ta' teknoloġija futuristika li kienet għadha ma teżistix dak iż-żmien. Min jaf kemm konna naraw affarijiet żinn kienet. Illum il-ġurnata kollox huwa normali. Araw dal-bniedem x'viżjoni kellu. Però biex nersqu iktar qrib ta' Gerry Anderson, ħanaraw din l-intervista li saritlu fuq it-televiżjoni Amerikan NBC fil-programm li kien iġib l-isem VIP.
Hello, I'm Katrina Skepper and welcome to VIP. Later in the show, pop band The Warm Jets will be performing and chatting with me. But my first guest is the creator of some of the most famous puppets ever to appear on television. He is Gerry Anderson, who launched the team at International Rescue with the immortal phrase, "Thunderbirds are go." He had no idea that he was starting such a cult, which would still be going strong more than 30 years later. Apart from Thunderbirds, Gerry also gave us such shows as Stingray, Fireball, XL5, The Protectors, and Space 1999, amongst others. He's the master of both puppet and live-action science fiction, and I'm delighted that he joins me now. Welcome, Gerry. Okay. I'm sure that when you launched the Thunderbirds back in the 60s, you probably had no idea it would turn into such a cult.
I can tell you that when we were making the show, I knew that it was going to be something special.
Why?
Well, we had a lot of people working in the studio, and of course, Lou Grade was the boss man who was in charge of the whole thing.
The big chief.
Yeah, and so as we were making the show, we got reactions to the characters, to the scripts, and of course, as I saw the show coming together, I thought this is going to be good. But you're right, I had no idea that 30 years on, it would still be around and people would still be talking about it.
Now, tell me, at the time, I know that when you accepted the commission, as it were, you weren't, your company was not that successful. You were struggling to get the films made, weren't you, that you wanted?
Well, I started off in the feature film business as a dubbing editor, and then I opened my own little company. And yes, we went through many years of struggling and trying to find the next few quid to pay the rent. But fortunately, we were then introduced to Lou Grade, and then everything changed. He bought the company, and from then on, he financed all the shows, and we had 10 glorious years with him.
And he had total trust in you, and needless to say, he was absolutely right. I wonder where the idea of the Thunderbirds and the Tracy family actually came from.
Well, Thunderbirds came to me because Lou had phoned to say, "I want to see you 7:30 tomorrow morning, Gerry, with a new idea." And I went, ugh, because I hadn't got one. But at that time, there was a German mine disaster, and a lot of miners were trapped underground. And I was listening to this on the radio, and I thought, you know, what a shame that there isn't some kind of rescue organization with all the specialized equipment. And I suddenly thought, wow, that's it. So I went to Lou, and I told him about this idea. And he said, oh, of course, it'll be science fiction, won't it? And I said, yes. That hadn't occurred to me at the time. And he said, fine, go ahead. And then we started to invent it.
And what about the idea, obviously then you decided, having established it with science fiction, the idea of this family in Tracy Island, how did you picture it in your mind at the time? Because does everything go down in drawings, on paper? How do you work?
No. At the time, there was a very famous television show called Bonanza, where Lorne Greene had 4 sons on a ranch, and it was a favourite show of mine. And I suddenly thought, oh, you know, yeah, good idea, father, 4 sons, So in fact, we made it 5 sons, but that's how the idea came about.
The family idea came together. And the rescue mission, obviously, you'd already established. These wonderful special vehicles sprang to mind. It was something that we'd all love to travel in one day. And they became, well, the Thunderbirds, as it were. From sort of an initial idea, how long was the evolution process before it became a series?
It took something like 6 or 7 months to build all the sets and the puppets and the special gizmos.
And what sort of size were the puppets?
The puppets were, I suppose, about 18 inches. An 18-inch high puppet would represent a 6-foot man. And then, of course, somebody very tall would be a little taller, and vice versa if they were smaller. But they were all about 18 inches high.
It can't have surprised you that Lady Penelope captured so many people's imagination. I mean, she is a heroine for all time, I think. What was it about her, do you think, that made her so special?
Well, I suppose, you know, she was well-proportioned. And she was well-proportioned, and then, of course, she was well-proportioned. That got the men, okay. I suppose just the fact that she was good-looking, lived in a stately home, had an exciting life.
She was an agent.
And she was well-proportioned. What else, what else do you want?
Now, there's one of the heroes, the family, that Scott, who's been made into a very special, limited edition, what should I call it? I mean, he's a sculptor. It's a sculpture, isn't it?
Yes. It's,
Tell me about that and why.
Well, it's something I've taken to. I heard about it, and when I heard that they were going to make this sculpture using top sculptors, and that each one would be hand-finished and what have you, I spoke to the animation gallery who are doing this, and I cooperated with them, and they copied this from the original puppet. I saw it through myself. Christine Glanville, who was the chief puppeteer, also saw it. She was one who sculpted the puppet.
Originally. Yeah.
So, you know, it's produced something that's not just another piece of merchandise. I'd go as far as to say, over the 30 years, it is the most special piece of merchandise ever produced, and I think it's going to be a great collector's item. I was
going to say even more special, because I think there are only 350 or so.
Yes, it's a limited edition.
In the world.
So people
100 available in Europe, I think. So if anybody's out there and they're a big fan or a collector, they should get onto the website quite quickly, shouldn't they?
Absolutely.
To be able to put their money down for. They're quite expensive, but they're worth it. We should say that the body of your work has been very extensive and extremely successful, but I'm sure looking back, that's probably the highlight for you in terms of what you created.
I think the highlight was Thunderbirds, simply because wherever I go, this is the show that people want to talk about. It seems to excite people. It attracts very high ratings on television, so... And
that's amazing, because even though things have come since, I mean, this was in the 60s after all, things have come since with more technology, whizzing effects and special effects and all that, and yet this still holds people's imagination, so it was obviously...
Well, of course, I think you touched upon a very important point, and that is that special effects don't make a picture. They enhance a picture. People sometimes, you know, say to me, well, what's more important, Gerry, the cast or the script or the music or the special effects? My answer is all of them. Everything's got to be right. But certainly I don't think you can take a bucket full of special effects and say, look, this is a great show.
Well, we've seen that many times,
yes,
haven't we? Apparently there's going to be a feature film made of the Thunderbirds, obviously starring real people, is that right?
Well, thereby hangs a tale. The rights to Thunderbirds now belong to Polygram, and they originally wanted me to make the film. For whatever reason, and I don't know, they handed it to Working Title. Working Title, I'm told, because I'm not on the picture, engaged some 50 technicians for a period of 7 months to prepare the picture, and then apparently they found that the cost exceeded the budget that was available. Apparently then the script went to America for a rewrite. I mean, it's a British show, but it went to America for a rewrite, you know, terrific. And,
Hollywood makeover.
Sorry?
A Hollywood makeover.
Well, that's right. Yeah. And eventually, for whatever reason, I can't say that it was cancelled, but I do know that all 50 technicians after 7 months have been fired. And it doesn't look to me as if the film's going to be made for a long time.
Well, do you think, in a way, that that those sort of characters should remain where they are? Would bringing them to life with real actors have been worthwhile?
Well, for starters, if you make it live action, how do you put together 5 people who look like brothers? I wanted to make the show using puppets,
Right.
because not the puppets that were used on Thunderbirds, of course, but the puppets that are used now, which are wonderfully animated. They're supported with computer animation, computer effects, computer backgrounds. And then I think we would have had replicas of the characters that the people know and love, and I think it would have worked wonderfully.
Well, Gerry, I don't see why you shouldn't still do it.
Well,
maybe.
ring polygram, folks.
Now tell me, this sort of what might to some people seem like an obsession with science fiction has governed your work from word go. Was it always a love that you had as a child? Something that's...
No, it's a thing in our business called typecasting.
Once you've done it...
If I go to a TV station, say, with an idea, they will look at it, and if it's not science fiction, I can see that the glaze come over the eyes, and if I say, but of course it'll be science fiction, fine. So I'm really stuck with science fiction. But I've got to the point now where I don't mind anymore.
You don't mind, and you've done it both in live action and animation as well. So,
yes, I mean, really, the only show that I've made that wasn't live action was The Protectors with Robert Vaughan and Larry Dawn Porter.
That's right. Now, you've got a new show coming up, I know, which is aimed at children, but I'm sure will be loved by all. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Well, it's called Lavender Castle. They're not human characters. And
They're animals?
Not really.
Invention.
You'd have to see it. They're different. And basically it deals with a group of bizarre characters who travel around the universe in a thatched cottage with jet engines. And they're searching for Lavender Castle, which will be every child, irrespective of colour, race, religion, whatever, it'll be their idea of heaven.
Of heaven.
And, of course, we have Dr. Aegon. If you take out the full stop, it reads Dragon, who is the arch-villain. And he wants to find Lavender Castle first because he wants to destroy it. So there you have the good against evil.
Well, listen, I want to have a look at these characters, so let's take a look. We've got a clip now to show you.
Close!
If the compass you'd possess, the right lever you must guess, but any mistake will cost you dear. Look above and quake with fear.
Oh dear, talk about being caught between a rock and a hard place.
If the big-nosed one chooses correctly, the lavender compass will be his, and then it will be mine.
20. 20.
Fantastic. It looks gripping. Now, you don't just create the characters, you've actually written this as well, haven't you?
Well, in this particular case, the characters were created by science fiction artist Rodney Matthews. But I have written most of the scripts. And I enjoy this because I've got a very nice office at home. And I sit in there and I look out on the countryside. And it's very pleasant.
It's a great place for your imagination to fly.
Yes, it is.
Considering you wanted to be a plasterer when you first started out in life, I don't think you've done too badly.
That was just lucky that I happened to get a skin disease from the lime in the plaster.
Otherwise, yeah.
Otherwise, I would have been a plasterer.
And we would have been deprived of all these wonderful series. So thank you so much, Gerry, for coming to join me today. And I've got my eye on that one, so I'm just going to see if the funds...
He's stuck down with super glue.
He's stuck there. He's not... Scott's not going anywhere. He's staying with me.
ليرجع ذاك الزمن من جديد.
جيري أندرسون مات العادة tal-miliet ta' l-2012. Qed nitkellmu 6 snin ilu. 26 ta' Deċembru 2012. Id-dinja, iċ-ċinematografija, il-programmi televiżivi tilfu wieħed jekk mhux l-aqwa bniedem b'produzzjonijiet televiżivi għat-tfal. Dana kien meqjus Gerry Anderson bħala il-Walt Disney tal-Ingilterra. L-istazzjon nazzjonali BBC wara il-mewt ta' Gerry Anderson għamel tribute program għal Gerry Anderson waqt il-program Newsnight. Aħna sejrin nalqu il-program Lura Fiz-Zmien tal-lum b'dan it-tribute tal-BBC.
For anyone of a certain age, me included, the name Gerry Anderson on the credits means a guarantee of excitement. He changed children's TV by, for the first time, not making TV for children. Instead, he just made quality shows that children could enjoy without being talked down to.
The shows were made meticulously, huge attention to detail, and of course it was a one-off. There was no other show in the world like it.
A pink Rolls-Royce gave a hint as to whose funeral this was in Reading today. Gerry Anderson's stars, of course, could not attend without someone to work their strings. Many of their voices, though, made it.
Not that many people may recognise your face, but if you say something, they might recognise who you are.
That's right. Yes, they might recognise that I did the voice of Parker a long time ago.
I was the angels' voices in Captain Scarlet.
All of the angels?
Yeah, well, I did 3 of them.
I mean, would you rather live on Tracy Island, do you think?
I would.
And the weather's not bad, is it, there?
Oh, the weather's fabulous.
I was lucky enough to meet Gerry Anderson about 18 months before he died. He'd been diagnosed with Alzheimer's a year previously. This was one of his last interviews. He told me that advice he'd got early in his career still rang true.
It's very simple. Never second guess your audience. You do what you want to do. And if you find that the audience like what you want to do, you'll be famous. And if they don't like what you want to do, open a greengrocer shop.
But early on, Gerry could only get commissions working in a genre he couldn't stand.
Some people liked the puppets and watching puppets. I hated puppets and hated working with them.
So he made it his own, doing it better than anyone else, always working around the puppets' limitations. They can't walk convincingly? Well, hover bikes and conveyor belts then.
I remember one wonderful moment. I was playing Destiny, and Destiny was saying, "No, Captain Scarlet, you will die. No, please, please, Captain Scarlet, don't." And I was getting emotional, and button went down. "Sorry, Liz, puppets can't cry." Oh, you're devil, you. Look at that.
Here's one scene Gerry never wrote. Destiny Angel kissing Scott Tracy.
He got so many productions from here into the American market. They wouldn't allow him before he cracked it with Thunderbirds. And they were watching it, and they had a sort of specialized showing. I don't know where it was. And anyway, the head of, I think it was NBC, said, "We got to have it. We got to have it. This is a killer."
Ignition sequence start.
Gerry's most creative period coincided with the space race. He, in common with his young audience, was obsessed with rockets and astronauts. On one trip to New York, he remembers lecturing a stranger on the mechanics of space travel.
So I told him how the astronaut escape system worked, and he was very interested. And, the speed you have to go to break away from Earth's gravity, all these sort of facts that I knew. And he listened. It was quite obvious he was very interesting. And he was doing the occasional, "Really? Oh, I didn't know that." Anyway, having talked myself dry, we got up and we shook hands, and he gave me his card, and I took mine and gave him mine, and I turned his card over, and it read, "Captain James Lovell." Well, I nearly fell through the floor. It was the biggest put down, not only I've ever had in my life, I think it's the biggest put down anybody could have in their life. And I was so taken aback. I said, You bastard.
In Gerry Anderson's shows, technology brought salvation, the triumph of our better angels.
It's futuristic and optimistic, and it shows us a better mankind in a way.
That's right. Good always was supreme. We always won in the end.
But he became disappointed by how the full-sized world failed to measure up.
The only thing that hasn't changed and hasn't advanced are people. And that, I think, is tragic, because there have been so many opportunities opened up. And what have we done? We've started, for whatever reason, one war and another war. And I often think to myself, in a way, us human beings deserve what we get.
He was a massive influence on television and children's television. And I think the greatest thing about all his work is that it was entertaining and there was no gratuitous violence. There's so much violence around these days. And I think he'll be remembered as long as television's remembered.
ليرجع ذاك الزمن من جديد.
Program li tassew kien jixraq għal dan il-bniedem li tant ħadem għat-televiżjoni Ingliża, televiżjoni anki Amerikana, gawdejna anki aħna il-Maltin minnu, tant li il-programmi, speċjalment Thunderbirds, għadhom jiġu ċirkolati sal-ġurnata tal-lum. 83 sena. Mhux kbir, imma ta' sabiħa wkoll. Il-kontribut tiegħu jieqpa' għal dejjem. Jieqpa' f'qalbna, jieqpa' f'moħħna u jieqpa' fl-arkivi għal dawk li qatt iridu jerġgħu jiġu warajna. Lura Fiz-Zmien. Eġajna wasalna fit-tmiem tal-programm. Tmiem ta' programm ieħor. Il-ġimgħa d-dieħla fuq ix se nittrattaw. Se naqtawlkom xewqitkom. Sejrin nitkellmu dwar żewġ Maltin. Il-tnejn għamlu żmien Hollywood. Tafu min huma? Ħanħallikom bil-kurżità. Minn hawnhekk fisem Margaret, il-co-producer tiegħi, fisem it-tim kollu ta' F Living, ma bali xeħlif nirringrazzjakom u ngħidilkom saħħa.
Album ritratti Lura Fiz-Zmien. Lura Fiz-Zmien. Pajjiż motiħor milli nafjien. Titħabbek miegħu bla ma trid u kemm nixtieq ara l-ftit li jerġa' dak iż-żmien mill-ġdid. Album ritratti Lura Fiz-Zmien. Lura Fiz-Zmien. Pajjiż motiħor milli nafjien. Titħabbek miegħu bla ma trid u kemm nixtieq ara l-ftit li jerġa' dak iż-żmien mill-ġdid. Li jerġa' dak iż-żmien mill-ġdid.